Call this meeting to order at 5:30. I call this meeting of the Northwest Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. Mr. Wright is not present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that the notice of meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. We will now adjourn into executive session. Wow, we have got a full house here tonight. Good to see everybody. Appreciate you joining us this evening. We're going to move straight on down to moving into the regular meeting. If you would, please rise for the invocation and pledge. Dr. Warren?
All right, folks, glad everybody could come tonight. If you feel comfortable doing so, please pray with me. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. And Lord, just thank you to be able to be part of this school district and be with our board members tonight, be with all of us tonight. We just ask that you bless this meeting, Lord, and please just see us all safely home. Above all things, Lord, we just ask that you provide your love, your guidance, and your wisdom to our children. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, we've got some special guests for our pledges. Sahara, where are you? Come on up. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, my name is Sahara.
Good to see you, Sahara. Zoe, introduce yourself. Or excuse me, Megan.
Hi, my name is Megan.
Now, did Ryan ever show up, ladies?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So it is just you two. All right, let's see. Sahara, Derek, and Kimberlyn. Kimberlyn, are you up? Wave at everybody. Thank you for being here. Sahara is a fifth grader at Love Elementary. Mrs. McAllister is here representing Love. Sahara, what's your favorite subjects? What did you say? You said math and reading. Good job. And Sahara loves to play kickball, and she loves to draw. She'd like to grow up to be a veterinarian. Great job. And my favorite thing about Clara Love is the people respect one another. That's fantastic. Thank you. And then Megan, Nicholas, and Desiree. Desiree, thank you for being here. Megan, what were your favorite subjects?
Science and math.
You're so good. Thank you. And she loves to draw and spend time with her mom. Very good. When I grow up, I want to be a pastry chef. Nice. My favorite thing about Clara Love is people are really nice. That's good. And Mrs. McAllister, this is what she said about the ladies. She said it's an honor having them at Clara Love Elementary. While each is unique in their own way, both of them display what it really means to be committed, compassionate, and dedicated students and human beings. They work very hard and never give up, even when it's presented as something difficult. They lead by example as true little Texans of character each and every day. So, ladies, thank you very much for doing this for us. So we're gonna pledge the American flag and then the Texas flag, please, whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Great job, ladies. Stay right there for just a second. We've got a little gift for you.
I'd asked several folks if they wanted to sing the Star Spangled Banner. Most of them declined. Anybody else? No.
Well,
okay.
Since Emily's already up there.
No.
Okay, let's move on to item 5, which is recognitions. Dr. Warren?
Mrs. Conklin.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Warren and President Schluter. Can you make your way to the front? We have a lot of recognitions this evening. Okay, we're going to start off with asking our Director of Outsourced Operations, Dana Chandler, and Director of Food Services, Debbie Rowley, to come to the front. They are representing Aramark Food Services this evening. The Texas Department of Agriculture has recognized Northwest ISD's school nutrition team with the Best of the Bunch Award in the 2017 Local Products Challenge. Every October, the Local Products Challenge encourages school nutrition teams to incorporate more Texas products into meals and teach children about healthy lifestyles in Texas agriculture. NISD earned this award by meeting the highest standards of the challenge. Less than 10% of school districts in the state receive this achievement. All right, so next we have a pretty large group coming up. I'd like to invite Director of Guidance and Counseling, Jamie Farber, as well as the counseling teams from Byron Nelson High School, Eaton High School, and Nance Elementary School to the front. These three campuses have achieved the CREST Award from the Texas School Counseling Association. That stands for Counselors Reinforcing Excellence for Schools in Texas. This is the third consecutive year that Byron Nelson High School has received this award. And since 2010, 9 NISD schools have achieved the state's top counseling honor.
Like we like each other. Good? Yep.
All right, for this next award, I'd like to ask Assistant Superintendent for Facilities, Tim McClure, to come to the front. The Northwest ISD Outdoor Learning Center is one of 4 architectural projects to receive the Caudell Award, the highest honor in the annual exhibit of school architecture competition. Goodness, that's a mouthful. This contest is facilitated by TASA and TASB for projects that exemplify excellence in planning and design of the learning environment. And this project was featured at the 2018 TASA Midwinter Conference last month in Austin.
Sarah.
And Sierra.
Picture, Sarah.
Yes, our Executive Director of Construction. Ms. Sarah Stewart. All right, next we have our Assistant Director of Athletics, George Lukenhaus, Executive Director of Athletics, Joel Johnson, and our SHAC Chairman, Heather Harrison, if they could come to the front to assist us with several recognitions. So the 21-Day Challenge is a healthy snacking challenge sponsored by Medical City Children's Hospital, Kroger, NBC5, and the United Way. 15 DFW Metroplex school districts took part this year, encouraging elementary students to change their snacking habits for a 21-day period. Students and parents participate in a pre-challenge survey and a post-challenge survey, with prize money being awarded to the schools with the greatest percentage of participation. This year's top participating NISD schools were Cox Elementary, represented by PE teacher Stacy Breckley and Principal Kim Beacon, and Granger Elementary, represented by Principal Michelle McAdams and PE teachers Valerie Boatner and Jeffrey Wade. Both PE programs will be receiving $500 to use towards equipment or other PE materials, compliments of the 21-Day Challenge sponsors. Okay, and for 10 years, the NISD Reindeer Romp has been supporting NISD PE programs. This year, Fieldhouse Fitness, owned and operated by Tim and Marika Scribner, are presenting a check for $14,290 to the NISD PE programs. In appreciation for their sponsorship of the 10th Annual Reindeer Romp, we would like to thank Matt Decote, am I saying that correctly, from Kia? Okay. Come on up. How do I say it correctly? Not Dakota? Dakota? Got it. Okay. We have Hope Bell from Alliance Airport and Hillwood Properties, Clint Abernathy and Jennifer Fox from Texas Health, and Holly Berry from Fit and Wise. With this being the 10th year anniversary, we would like to present Tim Scribner of Fieldhouse Fitness with a special thank you. The NISD Athletic PE Department appreciates all the time and effort you have put into the kids of Northwest ISD. All right, and last but not least, each year the Finance Department hosts a competition for artwork for the cover of the NISD Budget Manual. Deputy Superintendent for Business and Operations, John Grasswich, will explain more about this competition and announce our winner.
I think I got to do this because I'm going to ask Adela Baxliova to come up to the front. We've been doing this for about 20 years, and we're very proud to have this year's winner. Small bird.
And that's all for this evening's recognition.
Moving down to item number 6, we do have a couple of folks that have requested for public participation. Sue Williams with the Drop School Building. We do have an agenda item for this. If you would rather talk at that, Sue, or you can come now and speak, either way. If you would, please state your name and address for the record, please. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I am Sue Williams. We live in the Drop community, but my address is 6506 Williams Trail here in Justin. And I'm very happy to be able to talk with you tonight about the Drop Schoolhouse and the Drop community. We are 3 ladies here tonight representing the Drop community. I am Sue Williams, married to Stan Williams, who great-grandparents bought property in 1886 in the Drop community, and we still live on the farm that was obtained at that time. This is Janice May, and she was born in Drop, and I'm sure none of y'all know Sally Box, but she came as a little girl to the Drop community. So we're talking about an old school building that was built in 1923, and my husband's father was teaching there in 1935 when, because of the railroad coming through Justin, everyone exited Drop and came to Justin, and we're just left as a little community, but the school building still remains. So we are members of TEEA, which is Texas Educational Extension Association, and we belong to the Drop Club, which is an offshoot from Texas A&M. Our mothers and my mother-in-law were members of this club, and it was originated in 1942, and we have been responsible for this building ever since we leased it from Northwest Independent School District in 1948. So we've been maintaining and caring for it all this time. During this time, we have been responsible for upkeep, maintenance. We've installed a bathroom, a kitchen. We used to have only an outhouse. We still only have wood heat, and we have no air conditioning, so our time is limited when we can use the building. But as we use the building, we have homeschoolers that come and use the building for classes and recreation, and the club that we have has always maintained many classes from the extension office on home economics and gardening and such like that. So our goal is to be able to maintain the building and upgrade it to where we can use it more often. And there's several of us ladies there in DROP that have plans to teach gardening, cooking, canning, things that pertain to home economics. And we've got some very talented ladies willing to share their expertise in this category. We also are hoping to raise a historical marker for the DROP community, and we have already talked with the Historical Society there in Denton, Texas, and it's looking favorable that we would be able to obtain this marker.
Ms. Williams, I'm sorry, I'm only allowed to give you 3 minutes for discussion.
Thank you. I'm very much appreciative of your time, and we hope that you will look upon us with favor in participation of donating this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Now, the second person is Kristen Shahan. Is that correct? If you would, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you also have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Kristen Shahan. Nice to see you all. I live at 12711 Helen Road, Justin, Texas, 76247, in the community of Guy James Ranch. Currently, my son attends Hatfield Elementary, and he's in the 2nd grade. And I work for an education technology company called Explore Learning Gizmos. I work with Northwest IC and every school district in the state of Texas and Arkansas. So I have a few questions that I just wanted to address. One being, if you're going to consider transfers, if the favor moves the boundary where we are going to be zoned for Claire Love Elementary, how will you accept those transfers when Hatfield is a closed campus?
Ms. Shahan, in public participation, we're not allowed to address you, so we'll have one of our administrators get in touch with you. So go ahead.
So that was just one of my first questions and concerns. Secondly, my son, and the reason I'm standing here is for him. He is a unique individual little boy. He is in special ed. He's autistic, and he's got Asperger's. So he's been attending at Hatfield since kindergarten. He's thriving and doing very well. He's in the special ed program. He's on an IEP plan. He is also fortunate enough to be included in the Gifted and Talented program and Destination Imagination, which we just held this past Saturday, and the kids did wonderful. So with that being said, I've talked with his doctors and teachers, and I've come to the consensus that it's in his best interest to have consistency and stability from kindergarten through 5th grade. And that's it.
Yep, you did a great job. There's a lady sitting right back behind. Her name is Dr. Michael Griffin. Michael will introduce herself to you, and you can set up a time, and she will answer all your questions. You did a really good job.
Thank you so much
yes,
for listening.
Ma'am. Thank you.
Ms. Shahan. Appreciate you. That moves us down to item 7, consent agenda. One of the board members has requested that we move item E out for discussion. So we will consider the current items listed on the consent agenda. I will accept a motion at your convenience.
Mr. President,
Ms. Kopp.
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted, excluding E, the curriculum management audit.
Motion has been made by Ms. Comp, seconded by Mr. Sproles, to approve the consent agenda as submitted with the exception of item E. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you, Board.
5-0. So let's go ahead and talk. We're going to bring that later. So we're going to move with the board's concurrence, item 8I up, which is the donation of the former Drop Schoolhouse for discussion. Dr. Warren.
All right, Board, and the ladies who are in attendance, ladies, we appreciate you being here. We really do. They have been working with Mrs. Hobbs, working on this request, and Mrs. Hobbs, I believe, has information for you. So please, Christy.
All right. Well, lawyers don't get to do fun things very often, but this is a fun thing, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So the board has the opportunity to donate the old campus used for the old Drop School to the Drop Family and Friends, which is a nonprofit organization that's actually been, its members have been caring for this school for many years. The authority that allows us to do this is Texas Education Code Section 11.1541, and the board, typically, you know that a school district can't just give away property, that we have to use it for public purposes. But the board may authorize donating a former school campus to a governmental entity or a nonprofit if the board makes 4 determinations, and the determinations are listed up here for you. The first is that the property has historical significance, and as one of the earliest school campuses in our area, it obviously meets that requirement. The second is that the transfer will further the preservation of those improvements, and as we'll talk about a little bit more, this group has been working very hard to preserve this old school for 70 years. So they have proven that they are committed to caring for it. You also have to determine that at the time of the transfer, the district does not need the property or improvements. We'll talk more about that in a bit, but the district has not used it for quite some time. And the fourth is that the organization shows to the board's satisfaction that they intend to continue to use the real property for public purposes. Under this statute, if the property is donated, the property would automatically revert back to the school district. We would retain ownership of it if the organization does one of 2 things. If they ever stop using the property for public purposes, or if they try to sell or transfer it in any way. So it is a limited transfer for the purpose of preserving this historical property. The district use of the old schoolhouse, there is no current use. It's actually been leased to friends in the Drop community for about 70 years. If we were to retake possession of it, it would just lead to greater expense for the district. The Drop Family and Friends is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Their officers are listed for you on the screen. Just as a note, Tom Hobbs and I are no relation. I've never met him. I'm sure he's a lovely gentleman, but full disclosure. They are very clearly committed to preserving the schoolhouse. They have a fundraiser where they sell cookbooks to raise money to fund these improvements. And again, they and their predecessors have been leasing the property for about 70 years now.
And Board, I will tell you this, when we first brought this up, I asked Mr. McClure just to loan me the key so I could go out and look at it, and he told me we didn't have a key and Sally wouldn't give it back to us. So.
In terms of public purpose and how they are using the property currently, they offer several classes there. They teach history classes, craft classes. Homeschool students meet there for activities and enrichment. They also host weddings, receptions, funeral meals, birthday parties, and covered dish suppers. And they plan to add additional educational activities in the future, including food preservation classes, canning and freezing classes, and sewing classes. We do have some fine ladies from the Drop Family and Friends. So if you guys would like to join me and share some more information with the board, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. Well, if we can keep it brief, there won't be a beep. No.
I grew up in Drop, Texas, and I'm proud to be a Dropite. My mom, I remember as a small child going with my mother and daddy to the drop suppers. Dad and all the men would sit in the back next to the big wood-burning stove and play 42. My mom would be in the kitchen fixing the ice and the glasses and making sure that all the food was in the right order, with the meat first, the vegetables, and the desserts. That was real important. Now, all of us kids were always outside playing, and when it was ready, someone would come out and get us all and say, come on, let's eat. And we'd come in and we would have a prayer, and then everybody would eat. And it would be something that was community-oriented. And as the years have gone by, Kelly and I were very fortunate to raise all 3 of our children in the drop community, and now all 10 of our great-grandchildren are able to go and be at a function like the drop supper. We also have Santa Claus that comes every year. In fact, this last December, I sat on Santa's lap and told him what I wanted for Christmas also. Santa takes a lot of time with each and every child. We have pictures. We do singing. I was once a leader of a senior adult gospel singing group called the Justin Trailblazers, and we had gospel singings out there. Kelly would get a flatbed trailer put out beside the drop schoolhouse, and if it wasn't bad weather, we would have different people all come from different areas and do a singing. And the ladies of the community would make the desserts and have all the refreshments inside the building so that it was a community-oriented thing. Our daughter, was married in that schoolhouse. And there's just a lot of memories and a lot of, for over 60 years, I'm telling my age now, it's been something that's been very precious to me, and not a lot of people have that community type group that gets together, and we welcome new people in all the time. Of course, our area is growing, as you well know, but I feel very blessed, and I would hope and pray that you would consider allowing us to continue this endeavor with having our drop socials and our drop schoolhouse. Thank you. You didn't time either. Thank you.
Well, I didn't know I was going to have to say anything, but I am the oldest one of them, so. And I lived about, you'd say, a block from the schoolhouse, right by the drop store. And I used to roller skate down there by myself, no doors locked anywhere. And so it's been, everybody knows where the drop schoolhouse is and the drop slab. Everybody went swimming at the drop slab, and we're just proud to have it in our community. And we have drop supper Monday night, and I think they may be having it tonight. So anybody's welcome out once a month during the wintertime. The summer, everybody's in harvest, so you can't have it in the summertime. So we'd like to have all of you come out. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, ladies. Any questions?
I'm just going to say I've known all 3 of these ladies for quite some time, and they are hardworking Christian ladies. So we're glad to have you taking care of our building up to this point. So as you know, this is discussion only, so we will vote at the next board meeting. So does anybody have any questions?
Christy, would you just take them through the 2-step process? We do have 2 different items for next board meeting, correct?
Absolutely. So before the transfer can be made, the board has to have an open hearing, public hearing, where members of the public can come and express their views about the donation. That's scheduled for the next board meeting, and we will post that with a local newspaper in advance. And then at that meeting, the board also has the opportunity to vote to adopt a resolution to make the transfer. And then we would have a deed prepared and finalize all of the paperwork and make the transfer effective.
Anything else, board members? Thank you, Ms. Hobbs.
Welcome.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, ladies.
Climbing back up the agenda, we are now at item 8, which is discussion action under A, the naming of the Lizzie Curtis Elementary School principal. Dr. Warren.
Board, thank you. We have gone through a very exhaustive process to find a recommendation for you for the new Lizzie Curtis Elementary School principal, and we found one just very close to us, especially close to this building. I'm very proud to recommend this is Carrie Pierce, who is the current principal of Hatfield Elementary School, and we recommend her to begin the 18-19 school year as the new principal for the Lizzie Curtis Elementary School. That is our recommendation.
Board members?
Mr. Schluter?
Dr. Simpson, yes.
I make a motion to recommend the naming of the principal, Carrie Pierce, for the principal of Lizzie Curtis Elementary School. Second.
A motion has been made by Dr. Simpson, seconded by Dr. Rouse. It's a high-powered motion right here. The name Carrie Pierce, the principal of Lizzie Curtis Elementary School. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board.
Moving down to 8B, 2018-2019 instructional calendar. Dr. Warren?
Board, this is an action item tonight. Dr. Espinosa did a great job introducing this to you last board meeting, and now she has all of the information that we asked for from our community, from our parents, from our staff, and she's made a couple more little tweaks to the calendar, and I think she did a very good job through this entire process. So, Dr. Espinosa, please.
Thank you. So just really quick, I wanted to remind you of what our state requirements are, and that is to have 75,600 minutes and 187 contract days are the two biggest parameters that we work within, and then that we cannot start school before that fourth Monday in August. So taking that into consideration, the teachers, students, and parents and community of the district have these two options to vote on. And I'm going to bring you some of that data that we got. This was the closest calendar vote I've ever seen. The difference between the two options was only 70 votes. And I'm sure that is partly because the two options were very similar. Out of 5,188 votes. So we had, I think that's probably a record number of votes as well. So you can see here on the screen, really it was so minimal. Some groups definitely preferred one over the other, and some, it really just, in some cases, parents of the older students preferred one and younger students preferred another. Students preferred one. Teachers preferred one over the other. So it really was just a really close wash in the end. But taking that into account, the biggest difference, and probably the one that people commented on the most, was the number of minutes, adding minutes to the school day. And so since that option was not chosen as the more favorable one, we decided to keep the school day minutes exactly as they are now. The start and end times will be the same. Luckily, not all 5,133 people put a comment, or I'd probably still be reading them. But I did look through the comments, and to give you just a little bit of idea what those comments said. The positives were they really liked the idea of starting on a Tuesday. They liked having Good Friday off as a holiday. Some people loved having the longer break after Christmas, but on the flip side, some people liked to have a longer break before Christmas. And so we had both on that side of the fence, which is normal. We have that on a lot of things. Another negative that we saw in the feedback is the 2 half days in a row, that parents do not like that option either. And then wish we could begin earlier in August, but because of that state requirement of not starting before the fourth Monday, we had to keep that the same for this year because we are not a District of Innovation district. We are looking at that option, but for next year, that is not an option for us. The other kind of general pieces of feedback that we heard is that they wish we would be aligned to other districts around us. And if we were going to add 5 minutes, they wanted that to be at the start of the day versus the end of the day. And can middle school and high school start before elementary? Since the 5 minutes didn't come into play, there's really nothing, we don't really need to speak about that, except just for your information, that would have really started our elementary students early in the morning, and we really have to keep an hour in between our first and second pickups for busing because of the size of our district. And, we have discussed middle and high school starting before elementary before, but as the committee discussed that would require many of our elementary parents to then secure daycare before school as well as after school. And the way it's set up now, they can drop their students off before school, before they go to work, and that's about the time school starts. So, one thing that we will be asking the board for tonight is to approve waivers. TEA does allow districts to apply for professional development waivers for up to 2,100 minutes. We have built those into our calendar, and partly that was to help really support some of the feedback that we got from the survey, and also obviously to support our teachers' learning throughout the school year. And so you'll see those 4 days there are where we are requesting waiver minutes for a total of 1,620 minutes. So we're below the maximum that we can ask for. And I'll show you what that looks like in the calendar in just 1 second. And so this is our final proposed draft that we would like to bring to the board. I know it's difficult to read probably out there in the audience, but we will start on a Monday. Unfortunately, without adding those 5 minutes, I really couldn't find another day to add that there. So the committee talked about other options and where to put that, and we really just couldn't find one. So we will start on a Monday, which is like we did this year. The one thing that we were able to do is to keep Good Friday as a holiday for students and teachers. And then in December, you'll see that Green Friday. That's also going to be a holiday. So it's going to give you one extra day plus the early release day before that for students and teachers to be out before Christmas. We also we have one early release day in December instead of 2. Just some background on early release days. The reason we have those 2 early release days are really for secondary and for scheduling semester and final exams. It allows for teachers to get the grading done on the written part of those exams and make sure that their grades are in. So in December, they have a little bit more time, so we decided we could easily take that 1 half day, that early release away. But at the end of the year, we really need those 2 there so that they can get their grades in on time and parents can get grades as soon as possible so they can make decisions about summer school and things of that nature if necessary. The other thing is our calendar, our start date does not necessarily align with surrounding districts, but our Christmas break and our spring break do align with Keller, Eagle Mountain, Saginaw, Southlake, Grapevine, and Birdville off the top of my head. So for parents that have students in 2 different districts, those breaks do align with those districts. And we know that was important for them. And so you can see the days that are purple are some of the waiver days that we are asking for from the state and that we would need approval on this evening. Just as an important point to point out, the calendar actually has 76,500 minutes, so that's 900 additional minutes. The calendar does not include bad weather days, so you're used to in the past seeing bad weather days included, so in case we have snow, the students would make up those days during those bad weather days, but instead what we decided to do is to have those 900 additional minutes. So if we have a bad weather day, students will not need to make it up because we already have the time built into the calendar. If we don't use it, then we just get the kids for 2 extra days, and that's never going to hurt. So we really liked that option. The teachers also would not have days to make up if a bad weather day occurred. School hours will stay the same, and then as I said earlier, we are aligned. Winter break and spring break are aligned to those surrounding districts. Any questions?
No questions. I just want to compliment everyone for their input and hard work. So,
thank you. We were excited that we could make some concessions with some of the comments, and especially the alignment and giving back that one extra day at Christmas will hopefully be helpful.
I think it's a great job, too. I do have one question. On the 2 days at Thanksgiving that are circled in red, are those not flex days? They have to do the online?
As you know, in the past, there's always been required online trainings that TEA has asked us to do. And so basically, we're giving them credit for those trainings there.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Espinosa, a couple things. Looking at the results of the survey, I thought it was interesting that the parents, say for pre-K to 5, voted one option, the teachers voted another option. And then when you look at the parents 6 to 12, their parents voted the exact opposite, and the teachers voted the exact opposite. So it's kind of, what can you do? There was obviously no winner, but I like what y'all did with the compromise in a sense. But questions I have is obviously the same. I had questions on the same thing with the red circle days. But the snow days, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago when we had that big ice storm and things were closed for a while. And I remember the word being that we had the minutes, but we still had to get a waiver from TEA, and we didn't get it, and we still had to go to school an extra day in the summer. Does that sort of play in with the same thing? Or?
Well, when that storm happened, that was before TEA, before we calculated minutes, we calculated days.
Okay.
And so we missed more than the 2 days. And if I recall, what we did is we made up our 2 days with snow, but then we asked for a waiver for the other days. And TEA really does it about the same. They want you to build in 2 snow days, and once you have met those 2 days, you may apply for a waiver for the other days.
Okay. And on the early release, especially before December break, how will that work with the semester exams? Because currently they do semester exams all week long. Is that correct? So I guess how is it going to change anything? Or?
No, it won't change anything. They'll just typically what they've done on those early release days is take 2 semester exams those days, and so because they're about an hour and a half, so when they have the 3 hours, they take 2 those days. So instead, they'll just have a revised schedule on that additional day that's not a half day.
I guess I was just making sure that the kids weren't having instead of having 5 days of exams, crushed into 4 days, or is it?
No, because we've even done it in less than that if we need to. So
okay.
I think it's actually a benefit for the students because their exams could be spread out a little bit more.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Excellent job, Dr. Espinosa. Appreciate your hard work getting this together. So that brings us back to the board's pleasure.
Mr. President.
Ms. Scott?
I move to approve the 2018-19 instructional calendar as recommended by the administration.
A motion has been made by Ms. Kopp, seconded by Mr. Sproles, to approve the 2018-2019 instructional calendar as recommended by the administration. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board.
Moving down to 8C, Order Board of Trustee election. Dr.
Board,
Warren.
it is that time again to order our next Board of Trustee election. We have place 1, which is currently occupied by Mr. Wright, place 2 currently occupied by Mr. Schluter, and place 7, which is currently vacant. I would recommend approval of the order to call the Board of Trustee election.
Board members?
Mr. Schluter, I move to approve the ordering a Board of Trustees election as recommended by administration.
A motion has been made by Dr. Simpson, seconded by Ms. Kopp for the motion as read. Any further discussion on this item like we have a choice? All those in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Very good. Good job, John.
8D, RFP 017-022-12-045 for student transportation. Dr. Warren.
Board, this information starts on page 57 in your packet. You all know that we have been in the process of bidding our student transportation services out. Committee did an excellent job interviewing several different companies through the process. Both the committee's recommendation and my recommendation is to award this bid to Reliant Transportation. They are a local company. Their corporate headquarters is in Dallas. However, their biggest school customer is New York City Transportation, our New York City school transportation, which that's probably definitely not as challenging as our district is, but we expect them to do a great job for us. We really do feel after the interviews and meeting these folks that they're going to give our families the best services that we can provide as we get kids from home to school and then back home in the afternoons. I would mark any comments. I would recommend the approval of Reliant.
Hey, Mr. President.
Mr. Sproles.
All right, I move to award RFP number 017-022-12045 for student transportation services to Reliant Transportation and authorizing the superintendent or his designee to negotiate and enter into contracts with terms amenable to the district as recommended by the administration.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Sproles, seconded by Dr. Roush for the motion as read. Any discussion on this item? I will mention, and I'd like for you to kind of talk a little bit, Mr. Vicioni, about what happens to the current employees with Durham that have been driving for our district. We've had this discussion. I just want to bring it out in public.
Typically, in a transition like that, the employees will be, it's kind of somewhat seamlessly would need to apply for and agree to the terms and conditions of employment with the other organization, but they will all be offered positions at that time.
Mr. Schluter, I had a meeting with our bus drivers and our transportation folks last week and told them just that. If they are truly Durham people and they decided they want to stay with Durham, we're going to wish them well, and then we respect that. But we would like the majority of our bus drivers, of our transportation folks to stay with us, essentially with us. We made sure we told them that even though their checks don't say NISD, we do count them as our family, so we would hopefully they're going to stay on with us.
Okay. Any other questions? Motion's on the table. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board.
Moving down to 8E, which is RFQ B017-19-01043, Sam at risk for the Northwest ISD Natatorium. Dr. Warren.
The Natatorium Board. This starts on page 60 in your packet. Same thing. Committee did an excellent job interviewing the applicants for the CM at risk position. We are recommending Pogue Construction for this. Pogue is well known to us in the district. They do excellent work, and we recognize them to build our pool. And we expect excellence from that, correct? Mr. McClure, anything to add?
No, sir.
I would recommend approval, Board.
Mr. President.
Mr. Sproles, on a roll. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm taking the long ones tonight. I move to award RFQ number B017-019-01043 for CM at risk for Northwest ISD Natatorium to Pogue Construction for the construction of NISD Natatorium and authorizing the superintendent or his designee to enter into contracts as recommended by the administration.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Sproles, seconded by Ms. Kopp for the motion as read. Any further discussion on this item? Just letting Pogue know that we do have an accelerated construction schedule. We'd like to have this open by next fall if possible. Isn't that right, George? Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board.
8F, resolution for the establishment of a local emergency planning committee. Dr. Warren.
Board, this is a new request from us. You've not seen this before, but this information starts on page 64. Because of the change in the construction laws, Tim is going to take you through some new requirements, and we're going to recommend that you approve the forming of a new local emergency planning committee.
Yes.
Mr. McClure.
Thank you, Dr. Warren.
You're welcome, Tim.
Just wanted to, I'm still trying to get over Mark's comment as a grandparent of a swimmer. As we move forward into this new era of construction codes, we are now being required, because of where we live in this country, to establish storm shelters. And so as a part of that, there is a piece of the storm shelter requirement that falls within the code requirements that speaks to a local emergency planning committee. So I'm going to walk through that with you here briefly. But prior to doing that, I do want to introduce one person that's here, and that's Benchmark Harris. Mr. Harris is with Huckabee and Associates. He's the vice president of engineering for their group. And Mr. Harris has led us through the discussions of this as they have done several storm shelters now throughout the North Texas region. You'll know why I say North Texas region in just a minute when we get to the map. But Mr. Harris is here. If you have any technical questions, he can certainly step up and help answer some of those. So to get right into it, the new code that was brought about in 2015 IBC, most of our municipalities, if they haven't adopted 2015 IBC, they're probably in the process of adopting 2015 IBC. As a district, my process would be to say whatever the most stringent code is in any of our municipalities would what we would hold all our buildings to. So Fort Worth already does have this adopted, as well as the Town and Trophy Club. But in this code, it does require that Group E occupancies with a occupant load of 50 or more shall have a tornado shelter designed for a 250 mile an hour wind and constructed in accordance with the ICC 500. Now, really in the code, that's about all it says. There's a couple other little things in the code, but really it defers you to the ICC 500, which is the guiding document from the International Council of Codes that tells you how to truly build and operate a storm shelter. So here's the area, and that's why I said earlier, North Texas. Of course, that line, as you can imagine, as you see it on the map there, goes about through Waco. So if you live out of that shaded area in the state of Texas, or for that matter anywhere else in the United States, this code does not apply to you. So we are really right on the fringe of the entire map as far as being required to build and construct these storm shelters. So then the key requirements inside the ICC 500, there's a whole 40-page manual on it, but the key requirements are that you must be designed for 250 mile an hour wind speed. That's the highest category on the EF scale of a tornado. That debris impact testing for all components of the envelope, so that means all the perimeter, both the ceiling, roof structure, and the perimeter of that envelope be tested for debris impact, and that you have a minimum of 5 square foot per person in the open floor space in the building. So as you can imagine, this is a pretty large space, especially as we start to move into high schools. It is not a retroactive code, so we're not having to bring current buildings up to speed as of yet, but moving forward, you will see this starting to take shape. The Beck addition that we did at the Town and Trophy Club, that 4-classroom addition was a storm shelter. So that is our first one in place. We are designing them on the new elementary school moving forward, as well as any other requirement that meets the E occupancy and 50 occupants or more. So just to kind of put this in a frame of reference, this is a drawing prepared. This is West, is that right? Yeah. So this is the model look at what the reproduction of West High School was after their incident with the explosion. And in a normal situation, you have a host building and a shelter. So the host building is the majority of the building. And then if you just look, if I take this away, that's what's left when you have the shelter. So the shelter must be a freestanding, standalone building, meaning the rest of the building could actually blow away and become damaged, but the shelter is left intact. So why does all this matter with the local emergency planning committee? So really what the ICC 500 defines is that the LEPC is a group of citizens defined by the community as having responsibility for local emergency planning. The committee shall be recognized by the governing body as having this responsibility. Okay, so let me put that in layman's terms. Basically what that means is if we build these things and we operate these things and we have an LEPC, then we have the right of control over these pieces of the building and these shelters as opposed to the local municipality. And so it governs, the code says that they must recognize our committee as having the responsibility to govern, operate, and set the standards for those shelters. So that's why we're here tonight, is basically asking you to take the action. The resolution is there before you, to take that resolution authorizing the establishment of a LEPC, and then at that point the LEPC will start to bring forth the rules and regulations and the requirements on how we see fit to operate and maintain the storm shelter. I think that's it. Yep, that was the last slide. Any questions?
I have a question, Tim.
Yes.
How much additional cost does this add to a building, on average?
It's significant. As we're doing planning exercises right now for the new elementary prototype, we're figuring a cost per square foot for just that portion of the building is somewhere around $350 a foot, compared to the cost of the actual brand new portions of the building, which was at $235, I believe. So it's a little over $125, $120 a foot more because of the intensity of the structure that's required. So it is a higher expense on us. There's no doubt.
So, Mr. McClure, is this these storm shelters we have to do with expansions and new builds going forward, or do we have to go back and retrofit the schools?
So there's no application that says we have to retrofit. Actually, that was a very your first part of the question. Retrofit is no. The first part of the question is in the 2015 it was pretty vague, actually, as to what you did when you pulled an addition onto a building. 2018 code has clarified that and has given us those parameters. So there are certain parameters that you must meet if you are to do an addition to a building. So if you're doing an addition to a building and the planned addition can absorb the full occupant load of the rest of the building, then you must do that. If the planned addition cannot absorb the full occupant load of the rest of the building, then you're required to do it for the occupant load that you are doing the addition for. Does that make sense? So either you do it for what's being added. If that square footage can accommodate everything, then you have to do it for everything, but it does not require you to go above and beyond the planned square footage if you can't accommodate for everything. So point of reference, Byron Nelson High School. We're doing a major addition there right now, as you are all aware. That high school will actually have a shelter that will be sufficient for the entirety of the school, because the amount of square footage we were adding to Byron Nelson when you run the 5 square foot per person calculation is well within means of the added square footage that we're doing to the facility. So we're in the process of doing that for Byron Nelson. But there is absolutely there's no code reference or obligation right now that says that we have to go back and retrofit.
And so if we've invested in this safe zone,
yes.
Will this safe zone be able to be used instructionally for other?
Yes, what we are doing right now in our prototypes is we're making that safe zone the gym. So you have a big open area that's not confined with furniture or other things in the way. And so we plan a size big enough to house all the occupants of the building in that free and open square foot. There are other recommendations and regulations that come into play. I'll point those out as we move through the new elementary designs, you can see, but things like the occupants of that shelter must have access to restrooms. So there's little things like that have to happen. There's a control room in there that helps you lock down and secure the facility. It has to have standalone power and those type of things. And so we'll go through all those nuances as we move through. But typically that's where you see it. If you were to do it, you could do it in a classroom wing. We looked at that. Typically what we found is a little more expensive to do it in a classroom wing because we like natural light in a classroom wing. So those storm shutters get very expensive. You're having to put a lot of storm shutters in, as well as you end up using more square footage because you have to account for the furniture. And so to try to keep it as compact as possible, we thought the gym is probably the best opportunity, and I think that's what y'all have experienced as well, Ben.
Yeah, OG has done comparative studies between our shelter design versus other models in the market, and ours are significantly more economical.
And by ours, you're saying you've typically done a gym as the scenario? Yeah.
But it would be usable.
Yes, it's
On a
absolutely
day-to-day
usable.
basis,
Yes, ma'am,
yeah.
absolutely usable.
And then the committee would be administration?
Yeah, in the recommendation, what we're asking of you is that committee be made up of 3 members by position. So it would be the board president, the superintendent, and then anybody who served my position as well would make up that 3-person committee.
I just wanted to clarify, committee meaning it would be an internal committee.
That's
basically.
correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Board, we recommend approval.
Mr. Sluter?
Dr. Simpson.
I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the establishment of a local emergency planning committee as recommended by the administration.
A motion has been made by Dr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Sproles for the motion as read. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
So we're moving to some discussion items. Under G, provide adjustments to multiple school attendance boundaries and define new attendance boundaries for new campuses, one of our favorite items.
Board, this is that ends your action items tonight. Then the next 2 items are discussion only. These are a 2-step process. Mr. McClure has done a great job working through the process with our committees. We had committees of parents, teachers, principals on our planning committees for boundaries. We're opening 2 new schools: Leo Adams Middle School and Lizzie Curtis Elementary School for the 18-19 school year, in which we have to establish attendance zones, and then we have several other campuses because of growth issues and because of building capacity issues that we need to look at. So these will be introduced to you, the work of the committee, about a month-long work over 3 to 4 meetings. Tim administered with the committee. He's going to give you the decisions, the recommendations of the committee to bring to you. Tomorrow night, Tim and I and Emily will be hosting a Facebook Live show in which we will also present these recommendations to the community. And then the very next week, we're actually going to do a face-to-face, live town hall meeting to do the same thing, just to get as much feedback as we can from the communities and especially the campuses that we serve. And then we will bring this back to you the last February board meeting for final approval. So, Mr. McClure, please.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, board. So we'll jump right into it. I must say, just to start the process, we had a great response from our community. We reached out. We involved a couple of parents at every campus. We involved teachers and principals at the campuses, as well as the administrative folks, and we had really good response and turnout at our meetings. As well as I think I'm really proud to say we live in a great community. Everybody was respectful. Everybody was polite. Of course, not everybody is happy about changes, but when you look back at the history of this district, believe it or not, in the last 12 years, we've had to make 10 of those years we've made adjustment boundary changes. So this is the norm due to the fast growth nature of our district, and we just try to do the best we can to walk through those processes and be the most logical and most strategic with our decision making as we work with our community. So with that, in September, this happens basically every year, about September, we get back into school and I start working with Templeton, and at that time we had identified 14 campuses that we thought were needed to be looked at. And so we spent the next several months going through those campuses. In December, we reached out to our principals of those affected campuses and asked them to reach out to their parent groups. And then, of course, in January, we started our boundary meetings. We had 3 of those boundary meetings. And then we're here tonight on the 12th. Of course, Dr. Warren already mentioned the Facebook Live and the open meeting. And then we'll be back in front of you on the 26th. So there's kind of stem to stern the process that we've gone through so far for this year. So what we do, and of course, no stranger to you all, this is kind of where we start. We talk with the committee about the core beliefs about kids come first. We really obviously focus on that every time. The other ones are very important, but we also really hit on environment influences learning. Those two tend to be the two that come out of this discussion as very, very, very important pieces when making these decisions. And then we go through some strategies and some understandings, and we try to make sure everybody's on the same page with these. We typically don't get a negative response from our group, and we say we all want to be making solution-based decisions, knowing that we're not forming a committee to just throw our hands up and say, well, it is what it is, and leave it alone. That we want to prevent campus overcrowding. We know that their next two bullet points are very much tied to that. We cannot have a safe and secure facility if the campus is overcrowded, and we can't produce the proper learning environment with the proper appropriate class sizes if the campus is overcrowded. So those two we really hang our hat on. And then the last two there, we want to make sure we're improving the efficiency of the school, and that we're hopefully minimizing future changes. I mean, we're certainly looking into a crystal ball, and we try to get the best perspective that we have, but we really do that in the light of saying, okay, how long can this hold us off before we have to come back and discuss this again? So with that, we gave the committee the campus capacities. We had Templeton demographic. Of course, they'll be at the next board meeting to again give you the fourth quarter numbers. They gave the growth projections and talked with the committee. We reviewed those recommended changes that we had worked through with Templeton. We asked them to take that changes back to their community and to their neighbors on the streets that they live, and their social groups and community groups, church groups, and bring back that analysis and feedback. And then what we do is that second meeting, when they come back, we literally set up the software that Templeton uses to draw boundaries. And we say, okay, where should we move stuff? What are you thinking? And we play through that with the representatives from the community, and they may say, well, put the line over here, and we'll put the line there, and then we run the numbers and say, okay, look what that did, or look what, was that a benefit or was that a hindrance? Does it do what we need it to do? Does it not? And we walk through all those options that they bring back. And then, of course, we finalize with considering the recommendations. So the affected campuses are shown there. Of course, we got 6 campuses up there that are directly affected to the opening of a new school. So those are, for the most part, usually easier conversations. I mean, you're getting a new school open. People want to be a part of that. They're excited about that. And then we had the additional recommendations there for the other 4 campuses that were a little overloaded. So as you look at those, we real quickly marked through Beck and Roanoke. The numbers there, we could balance that Beck campus. It's about 15 students over, and we have the perfect little neighborhood to move and put at Roanoke, and it would balance Beck. But the numbers are just so low, and we went and did a deep dive with Dr. Cayley and HR and said, okay, where are they falling? Are they going to put us over a teacher-student ratio count or anything like that? And they really weren't. And so we said for 12 students, probably we just feel like we should take that one off the discussion. And after our deep dive, said that was okay to leave them be there for now. So that left us with the Granger, Thompson, and Hatfield overages, and we're going to get right into those. So we'll start here with current boundaries. This will be leading into the new elementary school opening. So the current boundaries there that you see for Haslett, for Peterson, and for Nance. And you see the numbers there as well. So you got Peterson, which is really rapidly approaching the capacity of 850. Of course, if you remember 2 years ago, we moved a group, a portion of that group that was attending Peterson to Haslett to relieve them. If we hadn't, they would have been well over 1,000 and probably close to over 1,100 students by now. And then we've got Haslett, which is that group that we moved that's pushed them over that effective capacity. So in looking at the opportunities for Lizzie Curtis boundary change, we kind of have a segmented boundary here, and I know that kind of looks odd, but it's very strategic. It's strategic because we're actually cutting a street there, if you're familiar with the area down south of the Peterson feeder where Costco is. So most of that area in that orange will be commercial. There are some apartment complexes that exist and that are continuing to go up right there. So we're strategic about taking a street that kind of divided the apartment complexes and put some of that load towards Curtis. And then we could potentially get a little bit of housing down in the very, very bottom corner, bottom left corner there, not frontage to the highway, but frontage to the residential street. And if those houses do develop, I know of no development that's happening there. Just seems logical. If they do develop, they have a very easy path. They would come across 287, take the service road north, and take a right and turn right into the elementary school where it is. So there's a little bit of question about the segment and nature of that boundary. But you can see with those changes, that really pushes out our attendance concerns really for about the next 10 years. I say that because the only one that falls back into the red is Haslett, and of course in the bond we have the Haslett that's going to get a new facility, and so that's it's already programmed in there. It's why you're seeing an 808. Currently it's at 650, but by the time it got to 808, it would be an 850 campus. And then there's that Haslett area is very, very large. We have at least two other developments. One site that we've already purchased in Laterra and one that we're looking at in that red area. So as those developments come online, that Haslett boundary will continue to shrink. But that's the long-term result of making those boundary changes. Do y'all want to stop at each one, or do you want to circle back at the end? I'll do whatever. We'll circle back at the end. Sounds good. Okay, moving on. So the next one we have up there is Granger. Of course, Granger has been over for about 5 years now. We've had portables in place for about that long. And we really, in this last bond program, approved dollars to provide an addition at Hughes to specifically relieve Granger. And so you can see it there. It's kind of the tale of two cities. You got one way over or over continuously for 10 years and one under continuously for 10 years. So we identified the closest portion directly across the highway that would cross 170, both traffic light impacts there at 170, so it would go right through those lights and directly across the street to Hughes. And you can see what that does. It basically provides a perfectly balanced scenario. It stays within 5% of the capacity for the next 10 years, which is really kind of right where we want to be. We want to be either a little bit under or a little bit over is where we would like to be. Some of the concerns that came up during that discussion was crossing 170, really specifically talking about pedestrian crossing. We obviously stated, well, that wouldn't happen. We would allow and certainly provide busing to Hughes. The other thing that came up was, and this is a common concern that our community brings to us, is, well, we purchased a house specifically for insert school. In this case, it's Granger. And of course, we try to just help educate people that this is a fast growth district. And yes, we all want to try to pick the school that we want to go to, but we really try to say we hope you pick Northwest ISD and not X campus. We have great schools. All schools have great successes, and all schools have challenges that they deal with. And so we work through them with that discussion as well. And then another common discussion point that you'll see repeated is they want to leave the current students there, meaning, okay, if you currently go today, then just whoever moves in the neighborhood new, then ship them across the highway. And we talk about how that really becomes a very inefficient model for the district. One, it's very logistically, it's very difficult to keep up with. Two, it's a costly endeavor because now we're providing dual bus routes. And three, it could actually mean that we're providing an extra teacher we don't necessarily need if we've got overages going both directions. So we talked through those points, and they seem to again understand that the logic and the reason behind those. Next one, moving over to Thompson and Sendera Ranch. Of course, you can see Thompson is already exploding, almost 100 students over its capacity. They're both 650 capacities today. We will be actually bringing to you here in the next probably month and a half or so request to go ahead and award, put out a bid for award for CM at risk to do both those additions at once to Sendera Ranch and Thompson, to bring both those up from 650 campuses to 850 campuses. You can see, and so that's why that number looks a little funny. If you look to the plan, you say, well, you move, it's 100 students over today, but then it's going to be, 40 students over at Sendero Ranch if you make the move. And then they both go white for about 4 or 5 years and into the orange. So they gain us about 5 years, almost 6 years, if we make that move. The biggest factor there, as we discussed with them, they really, as you can imagine, a parent from Thompson said, well, why don't we just put it off? Let us suffer through the construction, and then we're going to have this gap where we can stay there. And we talked very significantly about that. And we again did a deep dive. But the fact that they would be pushing that 750 number, the real part that puts us over the balance of the scales there is at that point is when we onboard a second art teacher, a second music teacher, and a second PE teacher. Now, that's 3 classes that I don't have space for today. Well, the PE is combined, obviously, but in essence of doing that construction, if you ask any of the other 5 campuses or Hughes, the campus we're under construction now, your gym gets smaller during that construction because we got to peel part of it off to expand that gym. So they're inevitably getting shrunk into a smaller space, and we have 2 other spaces that we don't have room for. So the construction or impending construction really made a strong push to say, let's be 40 students over at one campus versus 100 that's going to require additional teaching staff and additional spaces, plus during construction. So you can see the relief there again. We're buying about 5 years, which for me in our district in the state of affairs right now with 67 active developments in some stage, 5 years is great. I'll take it. It's not ideal. I'd love to say that that's another 10-year forecast that looks good, but we'll take 5-year chunks at a time. The housing right now, if you drove those areas, it's really, really booming as the numbers show around the Thompson feeder more than the Sendero Ranch feeder. Okay, overall concerns. Again, the busing became a concern. Currently, that group gets bused to Thompson. It's a point system. I worked with Dana on that. They would still get busing to Sendero Ranch, even though they look to be a lot closer, and they are. But they are having to cross a creek and a major intersection or traveled path down Sendero Ranch Boulevard. So those things alone would trigger a hazardous route for us. So we assured them that they would still get busing. Again, purchased specifically for Thompson. I've covered that. And again, leave current students alone and just ship the new ones that come in. And we've covered that. Okay, moving on to Hatfield and Claire Love, the one I like to call the donut hole in the middle of the donut, as Hatfield boundary completely surrounds Claire Love. Hatfield being our smallest campus, it's a 450 campus. It is a very, very tight campus, and you can see to be 76 students and growing over for next year is a major concern when Claire Love sitting across the street has plenty of room there. There is a lot of potential development in this area, and we'll get into that as I go ahead and move forward to the next slide. So when you look at this slide, it looks like it's a little bit deceiving because it looks like, man, you put both schools in the red in 3 years. And what I would tell you is we're really trying to get that divider of 114 to be a common divider. But more importantly, those numbers that are 3 years out, I'm going to tell you, I think are going to move a little bit. And because there's 2 major developments just to the west of Hatfield that are coming online, Traditions, which you've probably heard of, and Trails of Elizabeth Creek. Traditions we have not seen any movement of and haven't for 10 years. So those numbers that you keep seeing for Claire Love, Hatfield zone just continue to push out because nothing's happening there. Trails of Elizabeth Creek, though, is starting to gain a little bit of traction. It's a D.R. Horton development, and we fully anticipate that they will, once the road construction is done, which last time we checked was about a year away, they'll be done with the intersection out here at 156 and 114. You've heard me say before, I believe that's the gateway to the west. I think when that intersection is done and open, you will see all sorts of development starting to boom on 114 because right now it's just a hindrance to get construction contractors and material up and down 114. The minute you don't have to stop at that intersection and you can keep moving will make a world of difference. Either of those developments, we've visited with both developers. They both would like schools in their property. Either of those developments that trigger, we're going to have to make a response there, and that would then alleviate both these campuses, as you can imagine, a boundary line being drawn north and south to then section off that portion. So the red doesn't concern me here in 3 years. The bigger concern is what we're doing to Hatfield as we continue to overburden it year after year, knowing that we really won't reach that red until something moves with those developments. And again, we're watching that on a quarterly basis to see when that happens. There's the concerns, boundary adjustment to Justin next year. We had a very smart community. They kind of foresaw the writing on the wall, and they said, well, we know you're doing Harvest Elementary School, so when you take Justin's boundary and give it to Harvest, then you're going to reboundary us again to Justin now. And that was part of the comments that came from areas like Guy James Ranch and some of those up there towards the north. And truly, we ran the numbers and said, no, we're not. We can't afford to. Justin, you'll put Justin over again. The whole reason we're doing Harvest is to relieve Justin. And if we did that move, it puts Justin actually probably in a worse scenario than what it did to relieve it for the Harvest community. So we assured them that was not going to happen because it's not feasible. Secondly, they had some concern in traffic and access to Love. Valid concern, but we deal with that throughout the district. And then again, the leave students there and allow only transfers, including siblings. And we addressed that just like we did before, the expense of added bus routes, the difficult to manage, and the potential increase in staffing when you start to look at that. Okay, moving on to the middle schools. Here is you kind of see all the middle schools there, the chart at the below, and kind of I'm kind of showing you the end of the story before we go through the story, but there's kind of what it looks like. We'll step back and we'll come back to that. Currently, here's our current situation. So Chisholm, Tidwell, Wilson, all busting at the seams. A lot of students in this area, especially in the south. And so originally this was kind of where Templeton and I landed. We said, well, we've already got a section, that green section of Peterson already goes to Tidwell. So we said, well, they probably don't want to leave Tidwell. So we'll take the new elementary feeder pattern, the Lizzie Curtis pattern that we saw earlier, and we'll take it to Adams, and that makes a lot of sense. But it still doesn't help Tidwell, and Tidwell is in a pinch. I mean, they're going to be over. They already are over currently with their current class load, but they're going to continue to grow for the foreseeable future. So we started to do a deeper dive, and really what you see is that area I've got circled right there, believe it or not, and just kind of forget the red area, just the blue and the green area I have circled. And the recommendation is to take that blue and green area to Adams. 83% of the students that would attend Adams live in that area right there. It is the most dense and highest yield of the district. We've talked about this before with Peterson. The homes that are going in down there are happening left and right. Christy added to that number. She moved in down there. So, we have this scenario that continues to replicate itself, and there's more development coming in that area. So that's where you see all those growth numbers. So that's a major concern. If you really drill down, that Peterson feeder that I have circled right there is truly the linchpin of this discussion. When you get down into the meat of it and you really start looking at the numbers, we'll get into that in just the next slide. But that was the concern, and that's why we thought leave them at Tidwell. They're already going there. This is the concerns we heard. They really had a struggle with going to what they called a Byron Nelson High School feeder and then returning back to the Eaton High School for that split feeder that Tidwell is serving. Of course, Chisholm does the same thing. We talked through those scenarios. And we said it's ideal, but it's never a guarantee. We're sometimes going to have split feeders as we move through this as a district. They said after-school activities with siblings who attend Eaton. So you had one kid at Tidwell, and then they get back to Eaton for something. Again, very much a concern. Not a lot that we can do about that right now. Overcrowded schools. Yes, that's why we're having the discussion. Overcrowded bus, I explained to them that's not really a boundary problem, so we'll address that through other means. Road construction around Tidwell, I said, well, have you driven Eaton lately? And some of them nodded and said, yeah, it's pretty bad there too. So we deal with the road construction. You know that we have an agenda there that Dr. Warren is actively pursuing with our legislators and our city partners and our county partners. So we said it's prevalent throughout the district. It's not a fun thing, but it's something we have to endure. And then assurances of attending Adams. years ago. And I said, well, that may be the case, but right now, even if you were assured something, I could assure you something today, but it may change because of that crystal ball aspect. I try not to assure anybody anything. I tell them all, if you buy a house and you open your front door and the school is across the street and there's not a creek or a pasture between you and the school, then that one you could probably be assured. You'll probably go to that one. But outside of that, you just never know. So going back to our linchpin discussion, we looked at these scenarios, and you can kind of see. So we had I'm going to step back one slide. So all that area that was green, we said, well, obviously it can't all go to Peterson or to Tidwell because it's going to overrun them. So what if we split it? So let's split it and take some of it to Adams and leave some at Tidwell. Well, it gives Tidwell about a year, maybe a year and a half or two relief. Wilson still is not burdened, so that wasn't too bad of an option. But we still have the concerns of that group in the Tidwell feeder. They're thinking they were going to a Byron Nelson feeder and coming back to Eaton. So we said, okay, well, what if we put it all to Wilson? Well, it just moves the problem. Again, that linchpin moves it all to Wilson, and Wilson becomes very overburdened with that scenario. And then we said, well, what if we split it between Wilson and Adams? Again, it's the same problem if we split it between Tidwell and Adams. So ultimately, we have a scenario where we have a lot of middle school kids, not a lot of middle schools in that area to serve them, and we're going to be burdened in the next 4 years to produce another middle school. 5 years at the most, about 2022, 2023 is where we're going to really be burdened to produce another middle school down in that area due to the growth. So ultimately, what we came back to was a scenario where we said, let's send the whole thing to Adams. And there's a few reasons that we said that. Most importantly, Adams is got the land space for handling that growth as well as the square footage space. So Adams is about 20,000 square feet larger than Tidwell. It's about 15,000 square feet larger than Wilson. Myself and Dr. Ferris went through and did classroom counts at the new Adams building and occupied every room with 25 to 1 throughout the middle school. And we came up with the effective number that if every classroom was occupied, that you're looking at a building that can handle about 1,325 instead of the 1,200. With the collaboration spaces we have in there, with that extra square footage that's in there, it has room to be able to handle them. The other scenario is, regardless of Tidwell Wilson, if we split and put some at the other, we're going to have to put portables at there prior to us being able to have the funding to go out and produce another middle school because it's not in the current bond program. So right now we have portables at both those facilities. There's one area that we can put portables, and that one area is scheduled to receive a fine arts expansion. So I don't know where else I would put portables to handle because both those sites are very, very tight. Tidwell is on kind of a cliff. There's a lot of grade fall there. It's a very tight site, and Wilson is the same way, very tight site. So right now the portables sit, but they sit right where the expansion is scheduled to go. Conversely, at Adams, we have a wonderful large green grass area that can handle several portables if we need them. I'm not telling you today that we would absolutely need them. We may need 1 or 2 in that final year before we open a new middle school if we were to go down this route. So then the big misnomer there, or the big, stare you right in the face, is the Chisholm Trail numbers. So the Chisholm Trail numbers obviously drop. It goes back to that original circle that I showed you. 83% of the students are all down there. If we try to stay with the conversation that was passionate and among the group, which was, please try to keep us in true feeder patterns from middle school to high school. That is what we heard loud and clear from the Tidwell group and the Chisholm group. We had Chisholm representatives there as well. If we were to take some of that group back to Chisholm and put them in a split feeder, it only accounts, if you take just the couple of neighborhoods that are up that direction, it's only about 40 students. It's really not enough to make a difference in the grand scheme of things. It goes back to that very, very intense, very, very high yield area that's along 287 from Eaton moving south. So we certainly could look at taking 35, 40 students back. It just doesn't, it's not going to change the overall picture of what's happening in the South and the need for that next middle school. Good news in all this is we currently already own 2 pieces of land that both would work for that next middle school. We have 2 pieces of land, one at the Laterra site there in Haslett that is a middle school site, as well as the one right there on 35 across from Cabela's that is a middle school site. So good news is we have the land. The next news will be we're going to be back in front of our community telling them we're going to need their support or letting them make the decision on whether or not they want to approve a bond to help the situation out. So a lot of growth in the South there. So overall, there's the recommendation as they've been provided tonight, make boundary adjustments as provided. We would also recommend that we allow for grandfathering of students who would be in their final year at any given campus, with the caveat that transportation would not be provided. So if you were, example, as you're a 4th grade student attending a campus, you'd be allowed to go back there as a 5th grade student, or if you were a 7th grade student attending a campus, you'd be allowed to go back there for your 8th grade year. And so that's the recommendations as provided. I'm happy to entertain and go through any questions or comments that you may have. I know it's a lot of information.
So are you saying now that if we do this, that every middle school will go to a specific high school, they won't be split anymore?
Under this recommendation, we have true feeder patterns from middle school to high school. Yes.
What kind of impact do you think the 4th grade staying and being 5th graders in their campus, is that going to...
I think it's very nominal. What we've seen in the past when we've done that, it's a handful here and there. I think for the most part, a lot of parents feel that's a great idea. But then their neighborhood's going, the whole group is going, and ultimately the biggest catch on that is the fact that we typically don't recommend that we allow siblings to stay. And usually if the sibling's going to go, then the other child's going to go as well. When we've done this in the past, we just have not seen that make an impact one way or another. Yes.
Mr. McClure, something was mentioned earlier. I think one of the parents on the committee, this will be their 3rd elementary school to go to. Mm-hmm. Where is that having the most impact? Can you show me on the map? Like which school is that?
Yeah, that, let's see, do you see a cursor? There you go. So the most impact is right here, that group right there. And in fact, that group, and in fact, I'll back up a slide because it's the area I have circled right there. That's the group, and actually right where that arrowhead is the group that we moved away from Peterson. So that's the group that moved from Peterson to Haslett, and now they're moving back to Lizzie Curtis. They were, and again, I had repeat committee members that were on that group 2 years ago. And we told them then, we said you got about a 3-year stint at Haslett, and then we're going to build an elementary that effectively will be your final elementary because it'll be right in your backyard. So they knew it was coming. I'm happy and to be able to tell them we did it in 2 years and they got it a little bit sooner. But they know. And that same group, unfortunately, we had that same discussion this time because that group's going to go to Adams, and effectively they're going to move out of Adams. Wherever we open that next, if you look at the map of where we own property, currently we own property right here for a middle school, and we currently own property right here for a middle school. So inevitably, this group in between the highways is going to end up moving middle schools again when we open that next middle school. So very open and honest discussion with them then and say, you're probably going to be back in the mix when we have that. I can't guarantee it. We got to look at the numbers and see where the location is of that middle school. But having those same conversations about that same thing.
Is that the only area that's really affected with constant moving?
With the constant moving?
Yes, just in this part of the district.
Right now, it is. Yes, we've experienced that before up in the Canyon Falls and the Harvest community. It was spread out a little bit further than 3 years. I think it was more like 4 or 5, and they've experienced some of that in let's say in the last 10 years, but nothing as aggressive as what we're seeing in the southern part of the district.
Okay, well, I recommend the mascot for that next middle school be the Nomads.
The Nomads.
So we need to name it so it'll go something Nomads. Something starts with an N. So
Dr. Ferris is already. Oh, there he is. You got that, Dr. Ferris? Yes.
the middle schools, and particularly with Chisholm, it seems like an awfully small enrollment for a middle school, so it would most likely impact participation in sport, being competitive in all kinds of extracurricular. Yep. It could impact the offerings that we would have at that school. Were there any other ways to look at this so that you could get a better balance?
Let me back up, because I'll show you on the map where we'd have to go to make a significant difference. So in order to, and this is just to say to get them to what we may consider a viable number, and I'll put that at 700 students, okay? Still not a great number. But if you look at my arrow, we would have to come and take about this much of Pike. You see my cursor there? We're going to take about half of what's going to Pike, and we have to take all the way down to right across the street, and including some of the neighborhoods right across the street from Eaton. So it becomes a massive boundary just to get to, and that's barely to get to 700. I think when we did that study, it was like 710. So it's just at a geographic disadvantage, unfortunately, because of the pockets of growth. So we did look at it. It just takes an enormous amount of, almost half the land mass of our district to fill it just to 700 students.
It just seems like it puts them at an instructional disadvantage, so that would be a concern.
I'll defer to Dr. Thornell on this one, because I know that he's been working diligently on that task.
Well, truthfully, it could, but it can also be an advance. The things that we will ask your blessing and your commitment for the HR department. This offers all programs that it never do. That means we can go staff a little bit to do that. That can work. We looked at just the possible scenarios of what would be best there. There have been concerns over both athletic and fine arts participation. The size is different, and Joel and George have been working with not only our district but area districts to maybe find to align it where the smallest middle schools play each other, almost like a division type. Overall, I think that in small schools and large schools, there's pros and cons both ways.
It just seems like it makes it really different than the rest of the schools in this particular school district. So.
Tim, I have a question. How many more 650 schools do we have, other than the two we're about to convert?
We have Justin, which is a 650. We have Hatfield, which of course is a 450. Thompson and Sendera. Hughes is in the process right now. Nance is a 650. And Prairie View. And Seven Hills. and Haslett, but we've got a replacement for it for going to 850 in this bond. So there's still a handful out there.
That's an interesting conversation, because we've often talked about how good the small schools were, and now we're talking about small schools, and it's like, is it something we need to be concerned with? So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, this puzzle, again, I'll tip my eye. I've had numerous phone calls and emails from different parts of the community and their concerns, and again, everybody is very passionate about their school, which is a great thing. I want them to continue to be passionate about our district. But it's a difficult puzzle to fix right now because of the geographic constraints. I wish I could encourage a developer to go out and build out there towards the west, because I think it would be a great endeavor. And we have developers who have land platted there. They're just not moving on it yet.
And is part of it because of a difference in feeder patterns for high schools?
Is part of what?
So are part of the folks at Chisholm going to Eaton now, rather than maybe Northwest?
Yes, currently Tidwell and Chisholm both have split feeders. So they both feed Eaton, and then Tidwell feeds Byron Nelson, and Chisholm feeds Northwest. So they currently do have split. I think we will find ourselves in a very similar conversation in the not-so-near future due to the growth we're about to experience in the North Lake community. Both with Harvest, Canyon Falls, there's, of course, Pecan Square that's been announced, and they're moving dirt on that. I think that real quickly we're going to have a pocket of growth up there that's going to impact Pike and Northwest in a very significant manner. I see that in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's a lot to deal with and kind of happening at opposite ends of the district.
And I know sometimes there's a bubble in growth, like you're really big in kindergarten through elementary, then it all moves to middle, and then your elementaries get small again.
That's correct.
And so we've been looking at those possibilities as well.
Yes. And in fact, like I said, the next board meeting, Templeton's here to go over that. We are continuing to see that bubble kind of push down. Again, I don't think that's a big surprise. When you do the math after the recession, people kind of stop having kids, and now here we are 5-6 years after the recession, and with the growth of people moving to this to start their families and get them into the Northwest ISD area, we're seeing that bubble kind of push down to those lower grade levels right now.
Because Chisholm is so small, will we be more lenient on people who want to stay there? Or will we keep it aligned with the other ones that...
Well, it will certainly be an open campus, and I would at that point defer to our transfer policy, and I'll kick it over to Dr. Thornell.
Several discussions about being creative about how to practice and any of those at this point there has been talk about a school choice and those types of things.
Anyone else? Like I say, Tim, this is a monumental effort. I know you've put a lot of time in our meetings, a lot of time in putting this information together. I appreciate it, too. And if there's anybody in the audience that would like more information, go to our website and the About. It talks about our boundaries for upcoming meetings, our Facebook Live, and there's also websites that you can click on for a link to get back. If you have questions for Tim.
Yep, all the recommendations are posted there under the facilities portion of the website under the attendance boundary committee. Yep.
Tim, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That brings us to H, staffing for the 2018-2019 school year. Dr. Warren.
All right, board. Let me do it from up there. Sorry, Kim. Board, if you'll pull up the PowerPoint that I sent you this weekend, I want to start off this process. Kim Barker is going to give you the first staffing presentation as HR does every year, but I wanted to just kind of start this off as the preface of just kind of putting everything into perspective. And let me just put a disclaimer in here. I'm starting tonight, probably through mid-May, I'm going to be in a bad mood because of the budget. So let me get that straight. And I am every year.
Can we be in a bad mood?
You may.
All right.
If you go through, and I made this comment to Mark and Judy before the meeting, we are the poster child of everything that's wrong with the state school finance system. I sent you several slides just to kind of take you through, and I gave the same presentation to our executive directors a couple of weeks ago. And let me tell you this, John is a very good CFO. He has a reputation of being a good CFO, and a very good CFO presents all the worst case scenarios at the very beginning of the budget process so he can look better toward the end of the budget process. So this is worst case scenario, and I will tell you that. But we've got to make some really tough decisions, and we knew we had to. Last year was speculation. Last year we were still fighting for ASSETAR funding. And the state has answered that question, and they've told us no. So we are losing, anywhere, if you look at the 18-19 school year, possibly up to $9.5 to $10 million, and you can just roll through. The challenge, and you can see the amount of funding we will actually be losing from the state. And they've done this. I believe the final count was about 156 districts. Our taxable values had not risen enough to get us out of the need for that ASSETAR funding, and we're still there. One of the things that we're going to be discussing probably for the next several years, I don't know, I can't tell you exactly when we're going to pull the trigger yet, but you as a school board are finished setting a tax rate. You have no more discretion. You have adopted, you were forced about 8 to 10 years ago to compress the tax rate down to $1. Very wisely, you chose what we call those golden pennies, the 4 golden pennies you were able to access, and you've done that. So we've been at $1.04. We're gaining more than 1,100 kids a year. Our needs are growing, but you've stayed within that $1.04 because you've had to. You have no discretion, and that's one of the things that really is unfair from the legislative standpoint to school districts. The legislature has separated school boards from every other taxing board in our communities that Texas serves. If you look at county commissioners, city councils, hospital boards, college boards, they are all able to look at the needs of the district, look at of their organizations, look at if they're growing, if they're not growing, if their needs change, and they're able to set an appropriate tax rate to meet those challenges. School boards are not. So, you are done making decisions truly about the pennies that we need. If we need to go above the $1.04, that requires us spending X amount of dollars to do a special election to do so. We must ask permission of our electorate. $1.04 is the cap for the board. The hard cap is $1.17. Even if a community wanted to give a school district more money, more tax pennies than that, $1.17 is the statutory cap, so you can't go above that. So essentially, you have 13 cents in which you could access if the communities that we serve, if the registered voters allow us to do so. And then, of course, from the presentations that John made and Tim made during the bond process, that we're currently at $1.05 on the INS tax rate. We have one more nickel. We only have 5 pennies left to access those pennies for any future bond election, so we've got to be very careful of that. So we are capped out as a board and as administration on what we can ask for property for taxes unless we do that. If we do that, the special election, we just call it TRE, a tax ratification election. I wanted just to show you some of the things we've been talking about internally, the imperatives, and definitely what I call my superintendent budget necessities, which basically I just outlined the academic necessities that we've talked hours and hours and hours and hours about in the district. Number one, we have to take care of our staff, the staff compensation plan. I don't think it is necessary for us to be the absolute highest paying district in the area, but we do definitely not need to be mediocre or even at the lower end. I think we have to be very aggressive to make sure that the current staff understands how much we appreciate them, and we have to be aggressive to make sure we can recruit the staff that we're going to need in the future. We have to have appropriate staffing recommendations. We have to have program efficiencies, making sure that all the programs that we bring into the district do what we pay for them to do. We've got to make sure that we have appropriate funding for our special programs, expansion of academic coaching programs, expansion of behavioral interventions programs, and a sustainable technology plan, because technology is such a big part of the kids' lives. So, we're going to go through this process as through the first staffing request, the second staffing request. We're going to look at everything. The numbers will get better. We're going to take this, I hope you understand that we're going to take this very seriously about what our responsibilities are for our children, because kids come first in this district, but also what our responsibilities are to our communities and to our taxpayers. And so I just wanted to set this up for you, us being the team of 6 right now, or the team of 7 right now, and then we'll have an additional board member before the adoption of the budget, so we'll be back to a team of 8. we are in place right now, and we're over the next several years we're going to have to make decisions other boards have not had to make in NISD. Again, solely based on who we are, what we look like, and because of the inefficiencies and just the unfairness of the Texas school finance system. They're in the process of working on that system right now. There's an interim committee, but as John said the other day to the DLT team, they've had committees every year to look at our state system, and they haven't got it right yet. But we're going to keep pushing them onward to try to make this system more fair. We know we have to grow. Our budget grows every year just to add the teachers needed to deal with growth and to get in front of the kids, to make sure that we have enough teachers to deal with just the extra kids, notwithstanding all the other things that we need to pay for. So we're going to go be very meticulous through this budget process and to show you how the decisions that we're going to make over the next several months affect us in the years to come. I gave you a spreadsheet. I just handed you a spreadsheet that that's just kind of the, again, shows you what shape we're in. And again, worst case scenarios, because of the values that John is anticipating, and we are having some issues. Thank you, Mark. Because, and John is having some very specific discussions with our appraisal districts. There's some issues with, especially Tarrant County Appraisal District, that he's working through with them. Numbers are really not matching up for us the way they need to, so he's going to work through a lot of issues with them. But you can tell, especially us being an official Chapter 41 school district, meaning we are in the eyes of Texas, we are a property wealthy district, meaning our local tax dollars our children will not see. And it could be, based on the current tax rate, it could be almost $5 million that we would actually have to send back to Austin to comply with the Robin Hood laws of the Chapter 41. There's only two chapters in the Texas Education Code that deal with school finance, Chapter 41 or Chapter 42. If you're 42, you're called a budget balanced school district, which means you pretty much, are relying on local property owners as well as the state. But if you're Chapter 41, that means the state feels you have too much values, too many values, and actually have to be recaptured back to the state, which we completely disagree with. So that just adds to that red number of revenues less than expenditures. So our job is to work on the expenditures. In these times, we're going to bring you some very solid recommendations. Kim's going to start it tonight with the first staffing. This is a living document. What she says tonight could very well be changed by the time we get to the second meeting on this. But we're gonna keep working on this. The number one thing I want you to look at under the tax ratification spreadsheet is, even if we go today to the $1.17 based on these first preliminary numbers, we still can't balance the budget unless we cut another $4 million from it. So that just tells you, and you can see the Chapter 41 status, how it hits us as we gain more revenue from pennies that we ask for permission. The state gets more and more percentage of those pennies, and that's just not right by any stretch of the imagination. It's not right, but that's the situation we're in. So, having set that positive picture up, Dr. Barker.
Oh, thanks so much. All right, Dr. Warren, President Schluter, board members, thank you so much for having us here this evening. We're anxious to get our preparations underway for the 2018-19 school year, and this staffing request is that initial step. As Dr. Warren mentioned, it is a discussion item only, and we are seeking approval at the next board meeting on the 26th of February. There are several pieces that go into a staffing request like this. Of course, you've heard about the boundary changes, and that was the last presentation, just our growth in our district, and then making sure that we have the teachers that we need in those classrooms. Our staffing request supports board goal 2. You're very familiar with this. We want to recruit, develop, and retain and recognize our exceptional and highly motivated staff. By seeking approval for this and being able to get this going in February, it allows us to begin a rigorous recruitment process to really begin making sure that our teachers are placed where they need to be for the next school year, as well as finding our new educators that will be coming on board with us. Okay, there are quite a few things we take into consideration when we are planning this. First and foremost is a 5% growth in our school district of our students. We'll be gaining just over 1,100 students for the next school year. With that happening, of course, we have to have additional staffing. Very exciting. We are opening 2 schools, Adams Middle School and Curtis Elementary School, so we have to staff those 2 buildings as well. Our projections are also based upon the proposed attendance boundary changes that we have. Any adjustments to those boundary changes will make adjustments to our staffing. We've already had a lot. It's a living document. This has definitely been a living process with the changes we've had. And then, of course, we have Elementary 19 coming on board the following year. And just a reminder that it is a district process that we bring upon staff that semester prior to the school opening the next year to help get that building prepared. So that is all included in this request. Highlighting again, we have these 3 campuses that'll be opening. That has a big impact on our staffing request this year. Also know that when we are staffing these buildings, we are reallocating positions that are in those feeder patterns, okay? And I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. Campuses that are in the Curtis feeder pattern will have to adjust accordingly, same with Adams. And then, of course, specifically for Elementary 19, we're requesting to have a principal, an office manager, and some support staff to assist in the opening of that building, just like we've done this year with Curtis. All right, so the additional staffing in elementary includes 13 classroom teachers. This is after the reallocation of the other staff. We are staffing right now at K through 2 at a 22-to-1 ratio, 3rd and 4th grade at a 24-to-1 ratio, and 5th grade as the 25-to-1 ratio. That's how we are staffed this current school year. The teaching positions we need are after the reallocation of the other staffing. This bilingual teacher will be going out to Prairie View. That's where we will need another bilingual teacher, and that will make Prairie View's bilingual program pre-K through 4th grade. So I know they're excited to complete that program. Gates teacher, that will service our students at Curtis, as well as pre-K and pre-K aid. That's for Curtis Elementary. The STAR teacher, we're adding that at Clara Love Elementary. Our projections show that campus going over 800 students, and so our staffing formula calls for that addition. Also, the 2 art, 2 music, and 2 PE teachers will be, we're requesting those for Hughes and Clara Love because their staffing ratios will go over 750 students. That's all in the staffing formulas that are included in your packet tonight. The 3 campus assistants and educational assistants are also going to our campuses that are now going to be over 700 students, and those are Love, Hughes, and Sendera Ranch Elementary School. All right, moving on to middle school. After the reallocation of everyone to make way for the opening of Adams Middle School, we will need 25 additional staff members. As you saw, we're planning for Adams to open up over 1,000. The current boundaries now will show at Pike opening the school year at over 1,000 as well. That, according to the staffing ratio, will allow us to place an additional assistant principal, counselor, and campus assist at Pike Middle School. The 2 campuses that will really have a lot of staff reallocated will be Chisholm Trail and Tidwell Middle School. They will allow that they're in those feeder patterns affected by the opening of Adams. And then also Wilson and Medlin will have just some minor adjustments in their staffing that we really think will be taken care of through attrition. All right, high school staffing. This is where it slowed down a little bit now that Eaton's kind of topping out. We'll be adding 16 teachers. Of those, 6 will be for Northwest High School, that is gaining enrollment next year. 10 will be at Eaton High School, who is still growing. That assistant principal is slated for Eaton High School according to the staffing plan as well. There's not a lot of change happening at Byron, so there is no change in their staffing there. All right, special education. These positions are all for either Curtis Elementary or Adams Middle School. We'll have resource teachers at each. The SEEK teachers and SEEK aides, as well as the SOAR teacher and SOAR aides, will be housed at Adams, and we're requesting a PPCD unit and an SLC unit to be at Curtis Elementary. All right, at a district level, we are requesting an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, as well as an administrative assistant to support that assistant superintendent, as well as 8 instructional coaches to support our classroom teachers. As we do each year, this is our final piece, we request 10 contingency teaching positions to use throughout that year for any unanticipated growth that we may have. All right, and so our total for this staffing request is $8,672,300. As a reminder, it's a discussion item, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a couple of questions.
All right.
You said that this was based on 22-to-1 for K through 2. Mm-hmm. Did you do any projections on what it would be for 22-to-1 for 3rd and 4th grade?
Yes, ma'am. That is a great question. If we were to do 22-to-1 kindergarten through 4th grade, we would add 9 additional teachers to this request, and that comes out to just over $500,000.
And the 8 instructional coaches, that equals about the same thing, right?
It would be similar. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Barker, you mentioned some adjustments to the campuses that we're losing staff.
Yes.
How many would Chisholm Trail Middle School lose?
Well, quite a bit. As you saw the numbers there, we're hoping anywhere between 20 to 25 staff.
So the 25 that we needed at Adams, are most of those expected to come from that group? So it's a net zero, or is it?
Yes, it will balance out. Okay, so if you come back to this slide here, let's go back a few slides. All right, go there. Okay, so the 25 teachers we're requesting for middle school, that is after we reallocate staff from Chisholm Trail. That accounts for their smaller area and accounts for teachers leaving Tidwell. That makes their boundaries smaller. So as those teachers get reallocated in the district, we'll still need 25 across the campus.
For growth. For
growth, yes. Those are growth.
So how many teachers would we need if we were just opening a new campus, we weren't reducing any numbers?
Just opening it, if we left Chisholm as in 61, it's 61.
61?
Yes.
So I know you guys have some other questions, especially regarding losing the funding. It's kind of hard to fathom we're adding. We have to add some, I understand that, but what's absolutely necessary? Is it all absolutely necessary?
Yes, I mean that's what we're bringing to you. This is why we're continuing to work on it. That is why the system is not working, especially for our district like us, as dynamically growing as we are, and the need to add staff every year. Tim, I don't know if I heard Tim say this, but he's really trying to work with families so that we don't have to readjust attendance boundaries at least once every other year. And that's great. If we're able to do that, that's fantastic for families. But because of the growth in kids every year for us as a district, especially in the losing a budget, and probably 82 to 85% of our maintenance and operation budget is people. It's staffing. And that is the biggest thing that we've got to do. And as we continue to work on this, Mark, I don't know, I can't tell you if this will be the exact same staffing pattern that we show you for this second time go around on this. We're going to continue to scrub. We're going to look at the numbers as they are right now. The number one thing is the reason why we do this first staffing is we've got to go after talent. And we have to go, especially in the classroom teachers, this gives us a lot of time, if you approve by the end of February, to go after the very best talent to put in front of the kids as we move forward. So I don't know in this situation that anything is going to look the same from request to request to request once we get into the Judy asked about the budget workshops that we're going to have that John presented on the schedule that we're going to have. This is going to be an ever-changing proposals as we roll through the budget proposals, just because the numbers are going to change as John works with the appraisal districts. Those numbers will change, and we're gonna bring the very best budget that we can.
One of the things you showed on the slide that you provided the PowerPoint earlier is a 2018-2019, so we're losing $12 million. And the one that you gave us tonight shows the loss of 19.8.
And that's the information that we received because of the change in the numbers from the appraisal district. John's walking
With his hands in his pocket.
Slowly.
And so then the expenditures would include the $8 million for the first staffing?
That is included in that, yes, ma'am.
So
When we
that's the
presented the
220.
five-year financial forecast in January, in all those words, I mentioned that the Comptroller's Property Tax Division in the end of January releases a report that says this is the value from the previous year. There's a lag that you're going to use for recapture and local fund assignment. What we used in the five-year financial forecast in January was the certified tax roll, because typically the comptroller certifies the same value. You get local values in effect. What we got at the end of January, and we're working with the appraisal districts to better understand what's going on here, is a number that's $600 million higher. And so that, in effect, added $2 million worth of local fund assignment and another $4 million or so dollars, $4.7 million of recapture. So suddenly the district goes into recapture because we're not working on a $14.1 billion tax base. We're suddenly working on a $14.7 billion tax base, and that makes all the difference in the world. So that is the big difference between what we presented in January and what we have now updated, as we said we would, in February, because we received that report at the end of January. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means there's something wrong, quite frankly, because we're getting recaptured and paying on more money than we're actually collecting taxes on. And so I've got an email and phone conversations into the Tarrant Appraisal District and to the Denton Appraisal District to find out what's going on. Either A, there's a whole bunch of supplemental taxes that we're not aware of because we're still working off the certified roll and some supplements from Denton that aren't tying through. Or something happened in the appraisal review process done by the comptroller's office, and we need to file a protest. And protests have been filed in the past. For example, as recently as 2015, we did that with the Tarrant Appraisal District, and they had a computer glitch. What's actually going on at this point is unknown. We're just now starting the investigation, and how we'll proceed will be determined by what we discover, and we will keep the board informed. But that's the big difference between the two forecasts. The problem is that we do not live in a very stable environment where we're built out. We're living in an extremely active development. And for example, my forecast of 8.5%, I sent out to everybody, said, what do you think? Just, not going to hold anybody to it, not going to quote anybody. I'm going, I don't know. I mean, so it's literally almost impossible at this point to predict property values going forward. And so that's going to be a big thing that's going to swing through this whole budget process. We won't get any numbers till April, and we won't get any meaningful numbers till the end of May. So when Dr. Warren's talking about this being a process, it truly is. Because right now, I have an 8.5% placeholder, which is a pretty good number in my opinion, but I've had people say everything from 6 to 12. So it's a roller coaster. And you just have to understand that. What we do, though, and the reason we do it, is because by doing that forecast and then getting the update and changing it, we go, whoa, what's this? Now we can do an investigation to see if we need to file a protest. So we get meaningful information out of it that allows us to affect the outcome. So it's not just a paper exercise. It's an exercise that has real consequences and results. So that's what's happening right now at this point in time. And as we know more at the next board meeting, and of course through the superintendent's weekly reports, we'll keep you updated. But I think the one thing you can look at is, if you don't, I've been doing this for 30 years. A forecast is not, the purpose of a forecast is not to get hung up over an individual number. It's to look at trend lines. The trend lines clearly show that in the past the district has run surpluses. Currently, the district is, maybe losing $3 million last year. Okay, that's pretty close to break even on a $200 million budget. In the future, we're going to go double-digit negative because of the loss of acetone. So, without quibbling over any one particular year, you can see that the trend line is to go to non-sustainable spending unless there's a TRE or a change in the legislature. or really massive budget cuts. So those are that's what it's telling me.
Go ahead, Ann.
I'm probably not as good at numbers as I should be, but I'm thinking the 5% growth, which we typically calculate, that's correct. And so the new positions that are being requested would come in under that 5%. Is that correct? Or do we have some additional positions in this?
Well,
for staffing?
The reason why this number is above and beyond what Kim told you, this number is above and beyond what you usually, because of the opening, because there are unique positions. You know that you usually have to hire between 55 to 60 new teachers a year just to deal with growth. And then if we get above our ratios on any specific campuses, we know we add staff on that. But because, Ann, this is a year, and we'll go through it pretty much every year for the next, at least we're going to at least open one new campus, but this next school year we're going to open two. You've got those very unique positions that we have to fund also.
And so the first staffing request then includes those unique positions.
Correct, yes. Most of them,
yes.
Right.
Yes. Anything that is based on growth or adding students to a campus is included in this, yes.
Ms. Parker, with the, and also Dr. Warren, with the negative numbers we're looking at for the years to come, are we looking at redoing the district models on how to staff a campus? Like, for instance, I can't remember the position, but you said since we got to 700, we need a new position. Mm-hmm. Well, one person was doing it at 699, but now at 700, you need two. So has stuff been looked at?
We do have those staffing formulas for elementary, middle, and high school that are in your packet as well. And that is something that is continually improving. I mean, that we're a district that always continually strives to improve upon what we have. And those discussions, have happened. We keep in touch with the curriculum department and what the needs are on the campuses. And if there's a place to make an adjustment, we can do that. I think that's something we look at. Yes, and thank you. If there's something we need to look at your request, we'll be happy to. We also keep in touch, as he said, with TASB. We review their audits as well. Last year, our department conducted an audit for the secondary schools in accordance with TASB and looked where can we save positions, what are we doing at like other size districts, how are they staffing their secondary schools. So there are things that we constantly look at to make sure that we're doing the best that we can with the resources that we have.
No, that's a good answer, because my next thing is where do these numbers get established from? But it sounds like with help from TASB, audits and whatnot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then another question I have, I think more for you, Dr. Warren, that might be for John. The spreadsheet you gave us with the forecast at the bottom.
Right.
As the tax rate goes up, the expenses go up. Why is that? It seems like if
a budget... Chapter 41 recapture.
Oh, so the recapture is part of that?
Yeah, recapture is an expense. It's an intergovernmental charge. It's in the...
Okay, I see that.
Steve, Chapter 41 districts, once you get your preliminary numbers in through your PEMS in the fall, starting in February, you start writing 7 to 8 checks starting in February back to TEA until you have fulfilled whatever the number is at that time. And then at the end of the next year, you do final settle up, and either you get a little bit of money back or you actually pay more money depending on what TEA says your final numbers are.
Looking at the graph,
I just didn't know that recapture was included in with the expenditures, but I see how those numbers match up.
If you look at the graph, you'll see that the pennies number 5 and 6, there is actually it just bounces along flat because there's no recapture on pennies 5 and 6. But what happens is they have an extremely low rate or high rate of recapture and a low rate of retainage once you hit penny 7 on up. And so that's what you're seeing there is that additional that recapture being kicked up. There's two levels of recapture. Essentially, there's recapture on your base tax, and that's at what's called the Austin yield, which is $500,000 and something of wealth per student. But on a TRE or these additional pennies, they actually recapture at a very old rate back to the 90s of $319,500 of wealth per student. And so in our case, unfortunately, that means that for pennies 7 on through 17, they're recapturing about 40% of what that raises. So you see the revenue go up 100 cents on the dollar, but you see the expenditures go up about 40 cents on the dollar. And so we only net out about 60 cents on the dollar.
And John, I know from previous years we have been positioned to be in recapture, but we've had enough growth or something to balance that out.
Student growth.
Yeah.
Student growth.
Well, as you may recall from the previous forecast, we had about 13.5% property growth this last year, but and that didn't put us into recapture because we had about 5% of student growth, and we were working on a lower base. However, the Comptroller's Property Tax Division is really saying the growth was substantially over 13. I didn't do the percentage, but I'm going to guess somewhere around the 18 to 20%, and that would kick us into base level recapture with or without a TRE for about $4 million. The additional recapture would then kick in as if we did a TRE on top of that.
And Steve, let me further answer your question, the first question that you asked. And I cannot underscore what John was just saying about the Tarrant County Appraisal District and the Denton County Appraisal District. This discrepancy between what money we're actually bringing in tax dollars and what the TEA is actually going to tax us through recapture, that kind of significant difference usually doesn't happen. This is a mistake. This has to be a mistake by somebody. So we're going to do our very best to get that solved, because that makes a significant difference in what our bottom line number really is. So we're going to really work with them. But to answer your question, starting from top, we had in place a fairly aggressive administrative ratio of what we wanted to as we're growing in staff, as we're growing kids, what we thought administrative we need to look like across the district. We've already scrapped that plan. I've got in mind, and it starts, and it's reflected in this, I've got in mind kind of what I need for my leadership structure, and if we're able to do it, that's pretty much it for a long time, because even though we grow, that if I get this in, we're done, that may be scrapped when it's all said and done, depending on that. We're going to have a lengthy discussion about 22-to-1 across the district, because that's important to the board. Not very many Chapter 41 districts, fast growth districts, do 22-to-1. If we do it, that's going to be a great decision. If we don't do it, that's going to be a great decision. But we're going to have to really look at that. Probably the most significant impact right now I can tell you about staffing, because you do want to try to get it as far away from your classroom, is going to be in operations. Jim's sitting back there, and Jim works hard, and his guys and his crew work hard every day. Think about everything he has to do to maintain 30 buildings, and think about doing it with half the guys he has right now, because that could very well happen. Think about half the custodians that we're using right now. Our buildings will not be taken care of as what we're usually expected to do, because we're trying to save more money for inside the classroom. So those are the decisions that districts like us have to make, knowing we have to add every single year to keep up with student growth, but still try to come to you with as close to a balanced budget as we can, so we will not burn up through our thing. And that's, I can't say this enough. This is what is so not right about our system. If you look at us today, tonight, we are one of the most financially strong districts in this state. And John can show you a spreadsheet that we are broken in 5 years. That we are totally broken because of who we are and the kids that are coming into us, because of our educational excellence. That's what we have to fight against. So, yes, we have Dr. Kaylee, Kim, and the whole crew do an excellent job of establishing these ratios and these staffing ratios, but everything could be off the plate, especially if it turns out that these issues with the appraisal district doesn't go away. That makes a significant impact. So it has to be a living document. It has to be you can't dig your heels in about anything right now. You have to be very pliable when we're making these kind of decisions. And again, this is not decisions that any other NISD board has had to make, and it's up to us. So, we're in the right place.
All right.
You
You mentioned the 22-to-1, and yes, that would be great in a perfect world. So would the instructional coaches. I'm just wondering, is it better for our kids to have smaller classrooms, to have maybe more educational aids, or is it more important for them to have instructional coaches? And I'd kind of like to know a little bit more about that and how they help our teachers. And is that something our teachers want, or would they rather have more help in the classroom? What's best for our kids?
Sure.
So we're going to talk about that later, I suppose.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Much. Many discussions.
Any other questions, board members? Again, this is a very good discussion and very much needed. Appreciate you, Ms. Barker and Mr. Grasswich.
Good job, both of you.
Moving down to item number 9, the reports. Superintendent's report on the 2018-2019 budget. Really? Do we have to hear some more?
Done. I already did that.
We've done it already?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Under 10, consider any item removed from the consent agenda. And we had one under 7E. I will turn that over to Dr. Simpson since she had the question about it.
I just have a couple of questions for clarification. What is do we have a regular time frame for curriculum audits? Is there when was the last one, or is there a typical time frame?
We have not done one in that time.
Okay. And my second question is, how will the curriculum audit being put forward at this time have the opportunity to influence the strategic planning group, or will it?
And I don't see this audit, this audit is really going to get down into the weeds of the reading instruction and the math instruction that we're doing. I like bringing fresh eyes to what we do. And as Rob said, we haven't done this in 10 years. And so as he and I talk about how do we make sure that our C&I is the very most proficient. So that's that. And John has just conducted training on how we code and fund special programs. So that was part of this. Of my needs, but the strategic plan is going to be about the mission statement, the vision, the beliefs, and everything. So,
I just wanted clarification,
right.
So that's why I was asking.
I don't see it affecting.
It's not something that the strategic planning group would need.
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
One of the things we did put on hold because of the strategic plan was like District of Innovation status. That kind of is a discussion that will take us several years down the road. So those are the kind of things.
I just needed clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Purpose.
Okay, I'll need a motion for this item, 7E.
Mr. Sluter, I move to approve consent agenda item RFP number 017018010047 for curriculum management audit.
I second.
A motion has been made by Dr. Simpson, seconded by Dr. Roush. Was it you?
Yes.
Okay. For the motion as read for item 7E. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Let's see. That brings us down to the board president's report. I'll be brief. I only have one item. And the window is still open to accept applications to run for a place on the school board. So those of you that are in the audience that are still awake, the packets are available at NISD Administration Building Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 p.m. The completed packets are due by 5 p.m. on Friday, February the 16th, and Election Day is Saturday, May the 5th. And that's all I have to talk about. Moving over to Superintendent's report. Dr. Warren.
Board, just a couple of opportunities for you to participate. We will be, Tim and I and Emily will be having the Facebook Live tomorrow. Mr. Sproles, no goofy questions over Facebook, please. Emily will be screening the questions. Tuesday, February the 20th at 7 p.m. here in the administration building, we'll have the live town hall meeting, the face-to-face. Jennifer will post that meeting, so you don't have any fears of showing up. regarding a quorum, so you'll be good to go. So that you're definitely invited to that. The expo, our yearly expo, is Thursday, February the 22nd at Northwest High School at 5:30. And then, of course, 2 other posted meetings will be our strategic summit, our strategic plan, and that'll be Friday, March the 2nd, and Saturday, March the 3rd, here in the administration building, and those will be all-day affairs. One thing I do need feedback from you, if you want to think about this. We're going to have a different kind of graduation at the end of our school year. Saturday, June the 2nd, is going to be our graduation. We're adding a high school. The Eaton Eagles will present their first graduating class. So our graduations will be at 10, 2, and 6. It'll be an all-day affair. So the question Jennifer has is, as she's trying to make sure she's administering and taking care of us all day on that, would you rather, instead of trying to get somewhere off campus there at North Texas, would you rather have like meals come in to us to be able to do that and just stick around there? Would you like a supper, a lunch and a supper? Just think about those kind of things, and when you can provide me some feedback, what would be best? I mean, you know, it takes a little bit to get out of there for traffic, get to the restaurant, come back, and then everything like that. And then since we have 3, you know, it's gonna be a long day. So y'all just think about that, and I'll get some answers from you in the next couple of weeks.
I mention Hughes.
Do what?
Just mention Hughes.
Hughes Elementary. Yes, I will, Mr. Schluter.
Thank you.
Hughes Elementary School. Can't say enough about Tim and Sarah and Jim, the crews that for those of you who do not know, we had almost 3 days in a row where power was knocked out by the construction efforts as we expand that school. The construction team, though they definitely wish they hadn't have done that, they worked this weekend. They worked hard this weekend. Every electrical line in our courtyard has been replaced, and we are back on permanent power. So no more generators at Hughes, and our expectations are we're going to continue no generator at Hughes. So that was the staff. I could not say more about the staff at Hughes, the teachers and the parents and the kids. Rob took a picture of them in the hallway. They were teaching in the hallways. So it was a challenging experience, but everything is good now.
Cool.
That's all I have, Mr. Schluter.
Did you move? Okay.